This material is a broadcast news script outlining an exclusive report on left-wing organizations planning a massive logistical airlift to bring tens of thousands of Israelis living abroad back to vote in the upcoming election. And it contains some truly fantastic exclusive audio. So our goal today is to just dive right in and refine its journalistic impact right away.
Yeah, let's get straight to it.
Awesome.
The report introduces a massive logistical operation without adequately addressing the legal and financial mechanisms making it possible.
Right. I mean, the logistics they describe are honestly wild.
Totally wild. But the weakness here is that the script relies so heavily on the shock value of those logistical claims. Like, we're talking about coordination with major airlines and, contingency plans to bypass closed airspace via Egypt and Jordan during a national security emergency.
And the immense financial investments required to make all of this happen. But it just leaves those as dangling, unquestioned statements.
Right. They just drop these huge claims and move on.
Yeah, it really lacks the journalistic follow-through to interrogate the feasibility of these claims. Like, it doesn't address whether an NGO providing 18,000 free flights, housing, and rides actually constitutes a legal operation under current campaign finance and election laws.
I mean, if you're writing this, you might feel like simply revealing the scale is enough of a bombshell.
Sure, but revealing the scale is really only half the job. So my suggestion is to deepen the investigative rigor by actively exploring the legal and financial realities of this unprecedented operation.
Okay, so what does that look like practically? Do you have concrete examples for the writer?
Yeah, definitely. So you could add a brief quote or like a quick piece of analysis from an election law expert.
Oh, right.
Just evaluating whether these free flights and housing count as illegal voter bribery or campaign gifts under current law.
That makes sense.
And another concrete step would be to insert a sharp fact check regarding that emergency border. The script really needs to briefly explain the actual legal reality of a private group bypassing a closed airspace scenario via land borders during a national emergency.
Because, I mean, you can't just rent a bus and drive thousands of people across a locked border during a war. You'd need massive state coordination.
Exactly. And you also need a line detailing how exactly a private entity secures the massive funding required for 200 to 250 charter flights. Who is writing those checks?
Right. But wait, let me push back a bit. I mean, if we inject all this dense legal and financial analysis into a short TV spot, won't that just bog down the fast-paced, dramatic pacing required for a broadcast?
That's a super common fear for broadcast writers, yeah.
Because, it's like showing a complex bank heist in a movie, but never explaining how the thieves bypassed the vault's alarm system. The audience is thrilled by the action, but ultimately left distracted, asking, wait, how did they actually pull that off legally?
That is a perfect analogy. And the thing is, legal context doesn't have to be a 5-minute detour. You don't need a lawyer reading from a textbook.
Right.
You just need the anchor to ground those soaring claims in reality, like one crisp sentence saying, election law experts tell us this operation lives in a legal gray area. Boom, 4 seconds, and you've raised the stakes.
Yeah, you haven't slowed down the action at all. So once that factual grounding is solidified, we really must examine how those facts are delivered to the audience, right?
Which brings us to the next point. The narrative language occasionally tips into editorializing, which risks undermining the objective power of the exclusive recordings.
I definitely noticed that when I was reading through the draft.
Yeah, the weakness is that the script utilizes a lot of loaded, interpretive phrasing. For example, it explicitly states an activist, quote, removes the mask behind the project.
Oh, yeah, and it frames the whole narrative as the left's emergency plan right out of the gate.
Right, and by telling the audience exactly how to interpret the subject's motives before the audio's even played, the author inadvertently makes the piece feel like a partisan opinion segment.
Rather than a hard-hitting, undeniable journalistic expose.
Precisely. It introduces what we could call the authority gap. When a reporter forces an opinion on a viewer, the viewer starts questioning the reporter's motives.
Right.
So, my suggestion is to restructure the framing, to rely entirely on the classic show-don't-tell journalistic principle. Allow the juxtaposition of the subject's own contradictory statements to create the narrative tension.
I love that. Let's break down the mechanics. What are some concrete examples of how to do this?
Well, first, remove cliches like removes the mask. Instead, neutrally state the organizer's official public claim that the airlift is open to all voters regardless of politics.
Okay.
Then, immediately play the leaked recording of the Democrats Party activist stating that most expats are ours and that they need to ensure they bring the right voters.
Wow. Yeah, just letting that stark contradiction speak completely for itself.
Exact. Replace those emotionally charged labels with neutral attributions, so the leaked audio does all the heavy lifting.
Let me bring in the audience alignment lens here, because, skeptical viewers will immediately tune out if they feel they are being spoon-fed a conclusion.
100%. They put their guard up right away.
But let me constructively challenge you on this for a second. Isn't it a broadcast anchor's job to guide the viewer's interpretation of complex, leaked audio? I mean, people tune in to make sense of the noise.
That is a fair question, but there's a massive difference between guiding understanding and dictating opinion.
Okay, how so?
Guiding understanding means providing the context. It's saying, here is what they promised publicly, and here is what they said behind closed doors. Dictating opinion is saying, this organization is lying to you, and here is the proof.
Got it. So it really comes down to trusting the audience's intelligence?
Entirely. When you let the audience discover the contradiction themselves, the psychological impact is vastly stronger.
And, stripping away that heavy editorializing naturally opens up valuable script real estate to provide the missing systemic why behind the whole story.
Which is so critical. The script treats this voter mobilization as a purely one-sided anomaly, rather than exploring the broader systemic context of Israeli voting law.
Yeah, it really feels like it's presenting this massive operation in a complete vacuum.
Exactly, and that's the weakness. The draft presents this 250-flight airlift in a vacuum. I mean, yes, it includes a passionate reaction from Likud MK Amit Halevi, calling it a war for the home.
Right.
But it entirely ignores the structural reason driving this extreme measure: Israel's absolute lack of an absentee ballot system. By omitting the systemic driver and ignoring any historical precedent of flying in voters, the piece fails to analyze the true, unprecedented scale of this specific operation.
So what's the suggestion to fix that gap?
Elevate the significance of the report by framing this operation within the unique constraints of the Israeli electoral system and historical political strategies. You have to explain the rules of the game if you want the audience to understand why the players are going to such extreme.
I completely agree. So what are the concrete examples for weaving that into an already tight script?
You can add a single, crisp sentence explaining that because Israel requires citizens to vote physically at a local ballot box, mobilizing the diaspora has always been a unique strategic challenge.
Just one sentence sets the stage.
Yeah, and then briefly compare this initiative to past, smaller-scale efforts by other political factions like historically right-wing or religious voter flights.
Okay, to emphasize exactly why this specific 18,000-person operation by Kaplan and Brothers in Arms is unprecedented in its sheer scale and ambition.
Exactly. It shows it's a massive escalation.
Let me pull out the significance and relevance lens for a second. The so what?
I always think of this like a pressure cooker analogy.
Okay, I like that. If you don't mention that the lid is locked tight, meaning the total lack of absentee voting, the viewer doesn't fully understand why the steam is escaping so violently through the massive expense of these charter flights.
That is perfectly put. You absolutely have to show the locked lid to explain the explosion. Grounding the story in that structural reality makes every element, the logistics, the leaked audio, the political reactions, hit so much deeper.
It really brings the entire narrative full circle. Well, let's briefly summarize our three major takeaways for the author. Number 1, grounding the logistical claim with legal and financial realities.
Right.
Number 2, removing editorializing to let the exclusive audio drive the narrative. And number 3, providing systemic context regarding Israeli absentee voting laws.
So, for an actionable summary, consult an election law expert, juxtapose contradictory quotes directly without using loaded transitions, and contextualize the operation's scale against historical precedent.
Perfect. Thank you to the listener for submitting this deeply interesting material. We invite you to apply these edits, revise the draft, and submit it back to the critique for another look. Keep up the great work.